Welcome to the Chai Academy, and thank you for joining us today. We're in the middle of Hanukkah, and we're also in the middle of a course called Jewish Ethics and Beliefs. So each class, once again, is self-contained. If you wish to see previous classes, they can be found at thechaicenter.com/academy. Today's class is in Mentsch, Tzadik, trying to define. You hear a lot, this person's a Mentsch, that person's a Mentsch. Eileen, hi. Is it Tzadik? Is it Tzadik? So what on earth is a Mentsch? What on earth is a Tzadik? And two very different things. Some overlap. So first of all, let's take a look at the English language. When we say this person is a real man, right? Oh, that's a real man. What we mean by that real man is that he's macho, he's romantic, he's a stud, he has sexual conquests, right? Just this real man. In Judaism, in Yiddish, when you say Mentsch, which is the translation of man in Yiddish, it doesn't mean that at all. Right? What Mentsch means essentially is decent, honest, trustworthy, kind. That's what a Mentsch means. And it's interesting, even though Mentsch is man, a woman can be a Mentsch. It's not relegated to a particular gender, right? So she's Sylvia, she's such a Mentsch, and that's fine. It's not only Barry is such a Mentsch, but Sylvia could be a Mentsch. And the title, like, be a Mentsch, what are they saying? Is be a good person, be an ethical person. And when you say this person is not a Mentsch, whether that's business or whether that's in matchmaking or whether that's a partnership or whatever, it means avoid the person, because the person is not a Mentsch, not trustworthy. Once again, he's not decent, he's not honest. So avoid the person, because they're just simply not a Mentsch. And this is we find this. There's an expression in the Mishnah, or maybe the Talmud, I'm not sure, it's one of them, where it says derech eretz kadma laTorah. Civility comes before Torah. In other words, you got to be a Mentsch. Menschlichkeit, or being a Mentsch, comes before Torah. It is incredibly incongruous for a person who's so prays 3 times a day, and this person studies, and this person wears tzitzit, and but yet they're not kind, they're not decent, they're not honest, they're not a Mentsch. And Menschlichkeit comes before, and so while it's true, you have to have Torah, and you have to have pray, etc., and you have to have God in your life. So it's true, but what comes first? What comes first is being a Mentsch. One is not allowed to put religion before one's life, right? So you can't say no, God comes first. No, you see somebody on the floor, and they've suffered a heart attack. You can't say, oh, it's Shabbat, I can't make a phone call. You got to be a Mentsch. It comes first. It comes first. Menschlichkeit comes first. And I always say this. My colleagues may not always agree with me, but when it comes to my kids, so if my kids rebel, if my kids are not, as ritually correct as I am, let's say, I'm not gonna stop loving them, because my responsibility is for myself and to love my kids and to love them unconditionally. So therefore, for me to shun my kid makes no sense to me, because that goes against my biblical obligation. So, if my kid does something that's not ritually correct, as long as I don't do it, I gotta move on. Capiche? Then, so that's a Mentsch. Now we can talk about a Tzadik. So a Tzadik is basically, a Tzadik is a saint, right? So there've been many tzaddikim, like Moses was a tzaddik, right? Joseph was a tzaddik. The matriarchs, they're all tzaddikim, etc. We have and there are tzaddikim in in our lives. There's the Lubavitcher Rebbe was a tzaddik. Rabbi Aryeh Levin was a tzaddik, right? And there's so many different tzaddiks, but we have to define. Tzaddik is harder to define than a Mentsch. What is technically a tzaddik? So it depends in which context. A person who passes and they go to heaven and they have more merits than demerits, they have more mitzvahs than transgressions, they are considered righteous. Tzadik badin, righteous in justice. So you have that word tzaddik. Are they a tzaddik? Are they a bona fide tzaddik? They're a tzaddik badin, but it's a borrowed term. It's not really the definition of tzaddik. And if somebody has more transgressions than he has mitzvahs, then they would be a rasha. But are they really rasha, wicked? It's also a borrowed term, etc. So what is a tzaddik? So a tzaddik, as it's explained so colloquially, a tzaddik is more mitzvahs than sins. That's colloquially a tzaddik. A tzaddik can also be a righteous person. Truly a righteous person. A person who not only is a scholar, not only davens and prays, but also is on the vanguard of people's rights. Dedicated to caring for people. Dedicated to making sure that there's that people have enough food to eat. I spoke about Rabbi Levin. So Rabbi Levin, he was a phenomenal scholar, but you know what he was called? He was called the prison rabbi, because he lived in Israel and he went to the prisons. We're talking about even during the British mandate, when the British arrested a lot of Israelis, a lot of Chayalim, soldiers from the Likud or whatever, Lechi, a tzaddik is definitely a Mentsch, has to be. So he used to go to the prisons, and he used to go to the prisons, and he used to uplift them so much so that the prison asked him, would he also visit the Muslim population? He says, you leave them, they're changed people when you come, because he was the real deal. Completely sincere. There's actually a very interesting story with him. So there was somebody a prisoner who actually was it was up for parole. So, and he got a recommendation from Rabbi Levin. So he sat before the parole board in Israel, and they said, do you think you're a thief? You've been caught, but you're up for parole. Let's talk. Are you changed? Are you? So he says, I regret the error of my ways. Rabbi Levin has really uplifted me and made me a spiritual individual. And yes, I have been, there has been rectification. They said, okay, great. Upon the recommendation of Rabbi Levin, we agree. And stamped, he gets parole. As he's walking out, he says, I may steal one more thing. And the parole board goes, what? He goes, I gotta steal something very special to give to Rabbi Levin because he changed my life. And with that, he left. So a tzaddik has to care about God, has to protect Torah, but a tzaddik also has to be very well balanced and protect human beings. A tzaddik has to be equally balanced at time between helping people connect with God and helping people connect with doctors, help, money. I'll tell you, there's another great story of a tzaddik, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he was a young man, and there was this the first black congresswoman was from Crown Heights, and she became a congresswoman. And anyway, she went into Congress, and she met with the Rebbe, and then a few months later, she requested a meeting again. Why? Because she said she's so disappointed that she is from Brooklyn, New York, and the Congress, in their wisdom, that was tongue-in-cheek, Congress, in their wisdom, they put her on the agricultural committee. She goes, I know much about agriculture, right, as I do about the Kremlin, right? Why would they do that to me? So the Rebbe looked at her, and the Rebbe said, I have a great idea. You're on the agriculture committee, right? Which includes milk and includes grain, includes. She goes, yes. He goes, okay. Why don't you start a program that provides milk and cereals for poor families? She took the Rebbe's suggestion, and she was very instrumental in starting something called the WIC program, where they provide to pregnant mothers and mothers with children, they provide them with, coupons where they can buy milk and they can buy cereals, healthy cereals. It can't be, you can't go and buy chocolates with it, but it's certain cereals and flour and certain things they could buy, and the coupon is then redeemed by the shopkeeper, so it's free to them. So that's somebody who cares about mankind, is also scholarly. So that is the real definition of Mentsch. The Kabbalistic definition of Mentsch gets a little trickier. So the Kabbalists say that there's different levels of tzaddik. Tzaddikim run the gamut. Different levels of tzaddik and different levels of righteous people. They all have one thing in common, and that is they are no longer have an evil inclination. They are naturally free of challenges on moral decisions. They cannot make an immoral decision. It sounds inhuman, right? It sounds inhuman according to the Kabbalah. They cannot. So in other words, they go shopping, and the cashier gives them, $1.50 extra. There is no dialogue within their mind to say, gave me $2. Yeah, well, I should really give it back. Don't even think like that. $1.50, they put it down and they walk out. There's no processing, because all the processing has been done to the point where they are a machine as far as moral decisions, as far as what God wants from them. That is the definition of a tzaddik. And which means that their thought, speech, and action are all aligned in the righteous way. They have no foreign thought. if it's very subconscious, it doesn't come up to the conscious. They have no speech, nothing, no gossip, no cursing, no blasphemy, nothing. It will all and action. They just won't do bad things, as we said about the cashier, even subconsciously. Can they make a mistake? Can there be an error in their ways? Yes, there can be an error. Right? Absolutely an error in judgment. They thought it was holy, but they cannot consciously do something immoral, and even subconsciously, it's going to be very difficult. So that is the definition, the Kabbalistic definition of a tzaddik, that they don't sin. They just don't sin. They don't. Thought, speech, or action, and even internally. But there are complete tzaddikim and incomplete tzaddikim, and that there are many levels. So, what is a complete tzaddik? A complete tzaddik is a person who has, once again, the evil inclination has been driven out, and is 100% connected with God, and loathes, let's say, God, morality, etc., and loathes 100%, has no tolerance, zero tolerance for anything antithetical to God. So if it's antithetical, they hate it. Right? They can't stand it. It hurts for them to watch it, to see it. That's a complete tzaddik. So aside from having no thought, speech, or action negative, they actually hate things that God doesn't want, and that's being done. An incomplete tzaddik it also has no practical expression. However, they don't love 100%. Proof of the pudding is they don't loathe 100%. So let's say they love 98%, and 2% of them, 2% doesn't loathe things that are antithetical to godliness. And then you have 76%, you have 60%, etc. Right? Once you go below 50, I think it's no longer tzaddik. So that is the Kabbalistic one. So the Kabbalistic one is really very, very few. How many can you get that would completely? They have no bad inner consciousness. It's gone. They've worked so hard on themselves that it's just not there. And if it is there, it's external. It's not internal. And once again, they can make a mistake. But so that's a hard one. The other one that we expressed, where you're a Mentsch to people and you're Mentsch to God and you're all around. That is more of a common tzaddik, albeit according to the Kabbalah, not totally accurate. And then, of course, we have the colloquial tzaddik, where somebody that has more sins, more merits than sins, more merits than trespass. We also have something called the 36 tzaddikim. They're also known as the Lamed Vav tzaddikim. So this is almost like a Jewish legend that has been going on for thousands of years, that there are 36 people who are completely righteous. I'm not sure what definition, not the colloquial one, but are completely righteous, and but they're not known. They're very humble, and they are very learned and scholarly. They're totally connected with God, and they are incredibly in tune with God, and they help, and they this and they that, and they loathe anything that's antithetical to God, etc. But we don't know. We don't know how righteous they really are. They may be up nights studying, or there's, I tell you the story of Rabbi Aryeh Levin as an example of, he was, people knew about him, but they'll do something like Rabbi Aryeh Levin did. So Rabbi Aryeh Levin, one time he knew of a family that it was parent teachers conference, and it was a single mother, and she couldn't go because she had nobody to babysit. So he came with his wife. He heard about it, and he says, "Can we use your house? We need to talk privately. We don't want the kids to hear." And she said, "And that time you can do whatever you need to do, right?" So she left. She went to parent teachers conference. She went to, and they babysat the kids. She was none the wiser, because they did it clandestinely. They did it without saying, "Okay, we realize that you don't have anybody to watch, and it's terrible, and we're volunteering," and didn't want the woman to feel like a failure. So that is incredible stuff, just incredible. So there are 36, and legend continues and says that if there are not 36, then the world cannot exist. So there has to be 36. So who's the most famous of the 36? And we have a name, because he was hidden. Nobody knew the level of his spirituality, the level of his intellect, the level of his spiritual influence, and the level of kindness, etc. And that was somebody called the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a wagon driver. He used to bring kids to school, pick them up from their home or from the corner, a bus driver. A bus driver. But really what he did was he studied, and he prayed, and he helped, and he was there for people, but nobody knew. So, and we just don't know. But allegedly there are 36. Could be men, could be women. We don't know who, what, when. They could be across the world, but that is part and parcel of our belief that there are 36 people who really are the backbone of the world. And chances are they're the Kabbalistic version, where they cannot consciously do any wrong, because they're that lofty. And if they're the support, if they're the pillars of the world, then clearly they have to be incredibly, incredibly lofty. Who else is from the 36? Maybe if we Google it, we could find out. But I do know the Baal Shem Tov. He would have rather remained hidden, but there was a crisis. So he said he's going to forgo his hiddenness to become a public persona, because he can accomplish more. I'm sure he was cajoled. I'm sure it wasn't his decision alone, but he was cajoled, forced, coerced. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But regardless, that came to light. If you have any questions, you please ask, and if you have any comments, you can always write a comment, etc., etc. Yesterday we had a much more active day than today. Maybe the topic, I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens once you can never know once we're not live any longer. You want to be a tzaddik? The Chai Center has its annual, once a year, major fundraising event. So one could make a donation. thechaicenter.com/donate, and put end of the year, and any donation you make will be matched. Thank you. God bless. Bye.